All right.
run here.
So, hold on a second. Let me remove that. Save changes.
We are live.
Right, so yeah, we're live here, and today it's just going to be, I think, really all week. It might just be me and Mike. We might try and bring on a couple guests, but for now, it's just Mike and I. Our father is on vacation. He drove down to Montana, enjoying the outdoors. I think he'll be back either Wednesday or Thursday, and then we have a short week for July 4th. I know we did not do this Friday because Bob was gone, and it ended up being a bloodbath Friday. Really, last week was a big dip in the market, so we'll dive right into it. There was a lot of red today. Looks like the market's going to be up, but time will tell. Boeing is, I think, the big mover. They were up 7% pre-market.
It's amazing how Boeing just helps dictate the market to get things going.
Yeah, well, everything's going to be different as far as which stocks move and which ones don't. Boeing came out and said that they're going to start testing the 737 MAX starting today. So that's obviously causing them to move. Chesapeake Energy filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Just shows that there's still a lot of bankruptcies in the pipeline. I think that's the beginning of, not even the beginning. I think there's still a ton. And then you got COVID cases over 10 million now worldwide, with certain hotbeds all over the South. And, you know, obviously for our listeners, not to get into this because we're not a political podcast or show at all, but I actually had the corona it was about a 2-week thing. My girlfriend had it too. We lived together. A handful of our friends have gotten it. I'm living down here in Charleston right now. And not that this means anything, because I know every case is different, but for me, it was one of the most mild sicknesses of my life, like less than a cold, never even got congestion, no cough, nothing. Had a lack of energy, but now I'm completely back to normal, and that makes me feel good. So yeah, with that being said, I'll tell you, I personally think that we are going to see somewhat of a short-term pop, but I kind of think that the highs in this market were made on June 8th. And if you look at what happened June 8th, we had that sizable dip followed by a pretty short bull run, followed by another dip, which took us below the last dip. And I mean, you can make a strong case that we're in a pretty hard bear market, and that ever since June 8th, we've been trending down. And I think something for us to remind ourselves, a couple things. One, obviously, we haven't lived through too many bear markets. We've lived through some short bear markets, but I think from our experience in the market, anytime there's any sort of big drop off or big bear market, it's always happened really, really fast. And that's not always necessarily how it is or how it's going to be in the future. So, you know, you could easily make a case that we didn't see the lows in March, and maybe we go even lower, but maybe it's not some drastic fall and we keep trending down with bull runs along the way. And again, it does seem like when you look at the charts that June 8th marked the high, and since then there's been consolidation, but that we've been trying to move lower. And, you know, there's a bunch of charts that point to that. I mean, the S&P is now down 7% for the month. Small caps are down over 10%. Banking index is down over 20%.
Well, let's also keep in mind, number one, it's an election year. And like Dad's taught us over the years, June is historically never a good month in the market. So I think there's a couple things to think about there. And you've got the virus. I think that's another thing to talk about here. Even the headline era we're in with clickbait, I think that has to be discussed. Seeing a headline yesterday of there being 500,000 global deaths from this thing and running the math on that. I know you and your girlfriend had it. Corey had a terrible case of it. But the reality is most of these cases are very mild from people that have had it. A lot of people that have had it don't even know that they've had it. And I think that's where I'm a bit more bullish in this whole thing. I think, sure, there's going to be some short-term volatility. It's an election year. But I do think once the dust settles on this and people realize, sure, that there's an uptick in cases, but what's actually going on with the hospitalizations? Are we seeing that going to another surge? I think we're going to see in the next couple of weeks that's not the case. And that's going to lead to a lot more bullishness once there's clarity on that. And it seems like there's another stimulus package being worked on. even with the election unknown of who's elected, I don't think it'll make that big of an impact at the end of the day if Trump loses. It might short-term ruffle things up a little, but I don't even think, reading between the lines, Biden would be that bad for the market with stability. So I think at the end of the day, we're going to see some short-term, like you were saying, it's definitely, it's tough times, but I'm more bullish, I think, than a lot of people right now. I'm kind of starting to look at these narratives and trying to just see the big picture. And I think the virus, the resurgence is scaring people, but I think it's overblown.
Yeah, I mean, I think the virus part of it is overblown, but I think the ramifications that it's had on the economy and will continue to have from either fear that people have where things aren't back to normal. They're not going to be back to normal really anytime soon. You see,
well, like, there is going to be a new normal. Let's be real. There's no going back to what we were used to.
Yeah, but you see like Goldman Sachs come out this morning and see that already the bookings for airlines is down even further than what they were forecasting. So they've already like completely changed their guidance for 2021. You had a lot of people that were thinking that things were going to make this fast recover. And I think they're starting to realize that that's just not what's going to happen.
But
and
you're also seeing like all these, if you see into these travel agencies, everyone has just literally rebooked everything a year later, where it's like, oh, I want to do this just whenever we could. So it's not like people are like, oh, screw this. It's, hey, I'm eager to get out. When can I actually come and experience this? So you're seeing everything's booked out for next summer, for example.
Yeah, and I think then the question is really like, what kind of ramifications are you going to see from a financial and economical standpoint when things are pushed back for a year? Like, sure,
well, I think that's the beauty of the printing money era we're in. As crazy as it sounds, I think there's a lot. The bank, the Fed has learned a lot from the 2008 crisis. I think there's been a lot of instruments created over the years for these types of what ifs that could pop up in the world. And that's where I don't see the ramifications being as severe as we're thinking. I think there's a lot of cushion.
You don't think at some point it becomes detrimental for what the Fed's doing? Like when you look at where gold is right now, for example, it's getting close to breaking through the all-time highs from 2012, which would really put it. I mean, I'm going to pull up this chart.
I mean, Dan, I'm a big Bitcoin believer for a reason. At the end of the day,
but then I guess my question is, what is that reason? Because I do know you're a big Bitcoin believer, and I always thought.
I think it's just for world progress. When you think about it, I think there has to be a way for people to seamlessly work together and transact peer to peer around the world.
I don't normally look at charts like this long or for this amount of time, but like it's just interesting to look at this because when you look at what's going on here, and obviously this is a 30-year chart, but if you look at the 10-year chart, if gold breaks through these levels, it could really just soar to all-time highs, and it could basically increase the amount that this entire wedge period saw an increase from and get up to, over 4,000. And that's really the first time gold has been at this point where it's like a moment in history for gold, because if it breaks
through, Bitcoin, if you look at where they've been in a holding pattern, they are a guy came out last night that's predicted the last 4 bull markets in Bitcoin to a T. And he's like, we are a month out from another bull market really starting there.
So those are the things
that believe them.
Yeah. So, I mean, if those things hold true, it tells me that the market is in for some serious volatility. And I think the June 8th period kind of marked the top of the market, in my opinion, for a long time. Like, I don't think we're going to get past that. I think these bumps are going to be met by even bigger dips.
Well, yeah, until the election. Let's be real. This is all every 4 years, something happens going into the election.
So let's dive into then some individual things. First off, curious to hear your thoughts. I know we're both big shareholders of Facebook, and they've just been getting crushed with everything happening with all these big companies basically saying they're no longer going to advertise on Facebook. I mean, what are your thoughts? Are you starting to get concerned?
Not at all. My thoughts are Facebook is bigger than any scandal. I think they're going to figure out, they're going to see another 10% dip in the stock. Probably it'll go down to around 200. I think it'll be a great buying opportunity. Mark Zuckerberg there, for some reason, he has this distaste naturally with a lot of people. He's not a well-liked person in the media, but he's an utter genius. He's going to figure this out. They are definitely behind closed doors making a lot of moves right now with the guidelines. And I obviously, just like, I know this is way different than that data scandal that came out, because this is a movement with advertising and hate speech and a lot of things involving racism in the world, but it's Facebook. Let's be real. Have people stopped going on Instagram posting all weekend, Dan? Like, when I hear these things with these advertising companies, the reality is it's easy for a Unilever and PepsiCo to make these bold statements after a lockdown when they're trying to cut costs. I mean, how hard is it for our company to be like, we're pausing Facebook for the summer?
Well, no, I know. But I mean, to say that we're pausing Facebook for the summer, which is something our company will strategically do to save money.
Well, but that's part of what I'm getting at, though. Strategically, it's not I think a lot of this is a money thing, and it makes them look good in the face of the PR to be like, oh, we're stopping Facebook. If you're a Unilever, you're getting paraded now for this. It's a great look. So it's great marketing for them, ironically, getting off of where they market. I'm not at all concerned about Facebook. I think it's a game. As you know, I've been a huge Facebook shareholder from day one of us having any type of money. I think you're going to have a great buying opportunity. I wouldn't buy here, though. I think we're going to see more of a dip in Facebook until there's more clarity on this. I think we can get in around 195.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're way off their highs. They're just getting clobbered with all this news. They're going to be probably getting clobbered again today. It looks like they're one of the stocks that are popping up with a lot of high.
But yeah, Dan, you know the deal. There will be a bottom that's met here. It's not going to be probably this week, but it'll probably be next week. And I just think I'm not at all concerned. Like, when you really look at Facebook, the user data they have in the world, it's impossible to stop them.
Well, let me ask you, are you, like, my bigger concern, I think, comes more so just for the NASDAQ in general. I think there's this narrative now, and I mean, when you look at this, it's doesn't really look great to me. It looks like every time there's a huge run up, it's followed by a massive run down.
And isn't that necessary? And part of the bull in me says we almost need these corrections where I get a little bit, even after last week, in my head, I'm like, okay, this is healthy. Like, when we were talking a couple weeks ago, things just kept running up. And it's like, what's going on here? This doesn't make sense.
Look, corrections are healthy, but it's also important to look at the actual charts and see that, like, the last correction was not met by a new bull market. It was met by a fake bull market that was shot down. And as soon as it tried getting to that new point of resistance to get back to its highs, it was completely shot down, which is not normally what you see in a bull market. Normally, you're right, corrections are good, and then you get back on with it. And that's just not what's happening.
I personally think we're getting set up for a huge run in the market. I really do. I think we're going to see it's going to be an interesting next few months, but I do think I'm bullish for 2021, big time.
Does it not kind of scare you that there's this narrative that these top tech companies that make up the NASDAQ are they're almost like defense stocks where everybody's just piling into Microsoft, Amazon?
Well, no, and Google. Then I think it's actually, I saw, and there was a sell-off of those companies last week. I think this is all actually setting up for entry points for the long run. Is the reality. None of that scares me. When you think of sentiment and psychology, they are defense stocks. When shit's hitting the fan, someone's thinking, oh, well, Microsoft, and look at Amazon, what they've done the last few months. Is that
That's my point, though. I think anytime you see things that seem too good to be true, they are. And even though these big market cap stocks, they're all basically monopolies in their own right, and it's tough to make any sort of case against them. But
Amazon, how is that too good to be true to think they could be trading over 3,000 in a year?
I'm saying the company itself isn't too good to be true, but the price of the stock could be. And if those companies fall, they'll fall hard because there's so much money in them. Everyone's got their money in them, and it seems like such a safe haven to go.
I think it's one of those things. They're going to fall short term. you have to keep your wits about you and just realize, listen, have your anchors like we always talk about. Realize there's going to be volatility. If you're bullish on humanity, the market will go up long term. We're going to have some short term waves of stuff, but and I know we've been day trading, and there's always winners and losers. And I think also you have to keep in mind there are stocks that have gotten beaten down to a pulp that I also think are due for good runs right now, based on how the world's changed. I'll give you an example because I know we haven't gotten into stocks yet today. Paul and his girlfriend were at Harley Davidson. Paul's a bike rider. His dad was a big motorcycle guy. He has a Harley. They were at the shop yesterday getting his bike fixed. Paul was like, dude, I'm telling you, this thing is going to run up. The shelves are empty. I was talking to the parts people. They haven't had stuff sell like this in a long time. When you think about the roads, people aren't taking planes. You're right, Dan. When you think of the older demographics, they're getting on motorcycles. They are taking trips, enjoying the outdoors. I saw my buddy Daniel, who was on our podcast. You heard him say it last night, that people are out and about. You see the riders. And I don't think this stock's gotten beaten down a lot. I know it's come back a little. I like the chart, though. I think it's starting to trend up. And I'm going to be looking at buying some of this week.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot, Mike. I think
right?
Yeah, for sure.
And that, Dan, there's no data better than that when you have a good buddy that's a big motorcycle guy that really understands the culture of that company. And, for him to be giving me that type of scoop, because he's talking to those guys every week with his, the parts. And he's like, dude, it was encouraging to see that. So,
yeah, and I mean, someone like that, if he was on this right now, would look at this chart and say if things got good for them, they could easily make their way up to 35.
Exactly.
What are your thoughts on the Gap Kanye deal? Obviously,
Corey actually bought some Gap Friday. I like where his head's at. I think when you look at Gap, I thought that something interesting here, Dan. When you think of the Spotify deal with bringing on Joe Rogan and how that ran up afterwards, I think Gap, if you look a few weeks out, there could be some interesting options plays for us here.
I think
I have no doubt that there's going to be, we have to be patient, but I do think that is very big for them with the influence of it, Kanye. I think that was a clever play, and I don't usually condone the whole celebrity endorsements with partnerships like sponsorships. I don't usually think it does much, but this is a different beast. And this might help them out. I'm not going to touch it personally. I hate these types of stocks. Since Amazon's been who they are, I've stayed clear of this sector, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I personally think it's a huge shorting opportunity. I think the run-up was absolutely ridiculous.
Short term, you're dead on.
Well, I think a year ago, that kind of news would have been met with a 4% pop. And in this insane frenzy of a market, whenever something gets going, I think it went up like 35%. It looks like it's going to extend on that today. I know it sold off a little. These stocks are, in my opinion, all coming down hard when the music stops. I mean, Fastly is another one
that's just run up. I've known a couple people that are like, dude, I'm going to buy more of that. That's what it's
massive. This is a massive shorting opportunity. Yeah, I mean, the stock's going to be trading under 40 in no time. And when it happens, and this is where not to bring up Davey Day Trader, but one of the things he said like a week ago, or in my head, I was just like, oh man, he was basically talking about how much his portfolios run up, and he was going over how many down days he would need to have in order for him to be back to even or back to negative. And we've seen enough times since we've been in this game since 2016, when things fall, they fall hard and they fall fast. And there's some companies that are gonna really fall hard and fall fast. I think that's one of them. I think Gap's another one. I think Workhorse is another one. I mean, this is ridiculous. I don't even know what this company does. Doesn't really matter. This is not healthy, and gravity goes both ways. And when stocks run up like this, they're met with huge downturns, and it's going to happen to all these. Nicola's another one. I think Macy's has their earnings this week, and it's probably going to be disastrous. And
how could it not be?
Yeah, and that's when you look at Gap, it's probably going to trade with Macy's, and it's tough to imagine that the momentum continues on that. And
I think Gap, though, I think short term you're dead on. I would watch Gap, though. I think that could be a good partnership for them. I really do.
They also don't get the shoes, which is his main thing with that, which is still with Adidas. So Gap doesn't get that at all. So it's like there's a big separation on what the partnership and what it's not. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Mike, you were big on McCormick's, right?
McCormick's?
Yeah, wasn't
not that I know of. I haven't done any homework on them.
Well, yeah, no. What's the company that owns the Oreos?
Oh, Mondelez Snacks. I got out of that at like 52.5. I might get back in, but yeah, I think that's a great in a time like this with all these road trips and in general people home Netflixing and chilling. MDLZ is the ticker.
I brought up McCormick because they had really good earnings last week, and for whatever reason, I thought they were one of the names that you brought up on here. Or is there a stock that you're looking at closely today? I mean, I'm going to just pull this up. I'll put it.
Well, I did. I bought some CGC Friday, the Canopy Growth under 16. I think when we think about the narrative on industries, we've talked about this before, that'll be expedited from the pandemic. Federally legalizing marijuana is one. And Dan, I know I brought this up on our podcast here a few weeks ago. The psychedelic stocks, I will be dabbling. I was talking to Uncle Al yesterday. There's 3 psychedelic stocks that are in trial periods right now that FDA is going to approve these companies on at some point, and they're going to reach another level with where mental health is going. I have zero doubt about it. And these stocks are penny stocks right now. The first one's MMEDF.
MMEDF?
Yeah, MindMed.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love where your head's at here. Obviously,
Tim Ferriss, when you see Silicon Valley getting behind a movement, it's not in the media yet. These stocks, like I'm going to throw $1,000 into each of them and let them sit. I suggest you do the same thing. If this goes the way I think it is, I can assure you we're looking at 100x returns in the next 2-3 years.
So what are the other ones?
So MMEDF is the first one. The second one is SHRMF, which is champion-owned brands.
Okay.
So MindMed, Dan, is attacking the ADHD addiction market. So this is the whole movement of the big pharma getting rid of pills to take care of depression, PTSD. Obviously, there's been a lot of backlash because of all the money in pharmaceuticals. But as we know how bad the opiate crisis has been, we're going to see this take center stage guaranteed. It's been proven. And you look at these stocks, when anything comes out on this news being legit for the world, which it's about to, they're going to go on a run.
Yeah, I mean, look, these are, and as we know, and you even just said it, these are definitely speculative stock names, and they're names that you want to be careful with and not throw all your money into, because who knows what.
That's what I was saying. Just throw a little money in there. And for our watchers, even guys and girls, if you want to throw like $20-$50 into a stock like this, nothing crazy, just a little money to sit. I'm big, as you know, Dan, on trying to be ahead of narratives and just planning ahead. So CGC, I threw 1,000 shares into that on Friday, and I'm just letting that sit. That's an anchor for me now. I was happy. I was waiting for it to dip a bit more. I know I brought it up a few weeks ago, under $16. Okay. And the third stock that on that list was RVVTF, Revive Therapeutics. So here's the difference. The first 2 I brought up are all about the mushroom boom. The last one is the mixed play. It's a CBD company. So they're about advancing CBD pharmaceuticals, focusing on inflammation, liver disease. The reality is,
what's the ticker, Mike?
Big pharma's heading, these are going to be the breadwinners.
Mike, could you give the ticker on that again?
The ticker on that is RV as in violin, V as in violin, TF. RVVTF.
Interesting. 14-cent stock.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, look, I like where your head's at here. I think the big thing is that, you only throw like 1 or 2% of your money into it.
Oh, nothing. Yeah. Look at the early Bitcoin days, Dan. For anyone that got on that train, threw a couple $100 here and there, how they doing now?
Yeah, and that's still something that, Mike, I know you're big on Bitcoin. We each own a pretty decent amount of it. It's something that, had its moment in time a couple years ago and then came way back down, and now it's not what everybody's talking about. So,
but it's stable. Dan, if you were to tell me 10 years ago, what's up with Bitcoin just trading around this 9,000 mark, what's going on here? Be like, wait, what? 9,000?
Yeah, no, for
sure.
You
know what I mean? So that's maturity.
Definitely.
That to me is a very positive sign.
I agree. So I have the movers of the day pulled up here because this has just been an interesting
What's
thing.
What's going to be the Dan day trade of the day we do here?
I really, I don't know yet. Again, I know I was saying this a couple weeks ago, moving more and more of my positions into cash. I was lucky to sell off a lot of my stock in the last 2 weeks to prepare for what happened over the last few days. But again, I think my personal opinion is we see a pop that is a nice pop that makes it look like the bull narrative's back.
Yeah, a short-term tease.
And I think that's what we just saw too, is a short-term tease. And I think it's really important that the last little pop did not get even close to where we were June 8th. And the pop got really shot down hard. And then this next dip was lower than the last dip. I think the next one after this is going to be even lower than that one. I think it's interesting that in the last couple of weeks, it's been the narrative is that there's no way we're going to retest the lows. There's no way we're going to retest the lows. Like, no one thinks we're going to retest the lows.
But also, let's also keep in mind the narrative has been as bad as it can be with the world.
I mean, it hasn't. It hasn't. It's been good in the sense that even guys like Kramer or 2 weeks ago were like, yeah, it's obvious the economy's doing a V-shaped recovery. Like the Fed is that's a guarantee. That's no longer a guarantee. And I think
don't we also like the optimist in you? Don't you like hearing a lot of bad narratives? Like that's almost a bullish time where we don't like hearing everyone saying things are great.
Well, no, I know, but I don't think we are seeing a bearish narrative at all.
Really?
Yeah.
This weekend, if you look at all these articles, it's getting back to the shit's hitting the fan again, guys. That's all we're seeing.
Yeah, well, that's why I think we will see a pop this week. And
isn't it funny though, Dan, talking about that, how they always almost script things to get someone in a scare tactic, and then the opposite happens. And then vice versa. Everyone's all gung-ho about how great things are and shit hits the fan.
Yeah, I mean, the opposite thing is definitely always the case. But again, I keep going back to the fact that we saw the highs on June 8th. And since then, it's been nothing but consolidation and the market heading up.
But Dan, keep in mind, June, Ben Dad called in the beginning of the month. It's bad. It's usually a bad month. So we should expect – I'm with you. I think we're going to see a short-term rally here, usually going into July 4th if things are good, just because of people's moods and, holiday. So I do think we're going to have a not too bad of a week. It seems like some people keep thinking we're going to have this massive next level sell-off this week. I don't see that. I could see that happening in a couple weeks, perhaps. But I do think we're going to see a nice little run-up this week.
I could actually see the sell-off continuing today, but then seeing some sort of pop to go into July.
Maybe in the beginning of the day. I could see even like by the afternoon maybe. It's a shortened week. I just think there's something about 4th of July that gets everyone.
Well, look, historically, it's been a good week for 4th of July.
The S&P always does well going into 4th of July.
So what are you looking at? Do you have a trade of the day that you're looking at?
I think Hog, what I brought up earlier, Harley Davidson. If I'm going to jump on something today, it's going to be that. But I'm pumped to look into a day trade with you. I mean, I think Penn and DraftKings, I'm curious to see. I know we've got NBA coming back next week.
And those charts, just to bring them up, those are charts that just scare the shit out of me. Like, I think those stocks both saw their highs for a while. And I'm not going to get stuck in a situation where I'm like waiting for DraftKings to get back to its all-time highs.
So are you dishing off some of that?
I don't know. I'm keeping an eye on it. And Penn, like, don't get me wrong. I think they're kind of in between territories right now.
I went long on both.
Yeah, I think they're both heading lower. I think, but I'm waiting for any sort of pop on Nike to get out. I think I was wrong.
I got out at Nike right after the earnings.
Yeah, I think I was wrong about their earnings. I think they had impressive earnings, but I just don't think they're a good stock for this environment. I think they'll get a pop, and that'll be my opportunity to get out. And when I say a pop, I don't mean to all-time highs, just some sort of pop before they probably ultimately go below 90. So
what's your stock today?
my stock for today is, I mean, I think Boeing is going to make an interesting trading stock because it's got the pre-market volatility. So I might look to trade Boeing. I know I'm long on it, but
I'm long on it too. I'm with you on that.
I'm really looking to get out of Nike is where I'm at. So let's have a good day here.
Take care, everybody.